Carter had always been precise. In his work, in his words, and now, in love. To the outside world, his proposal to Hope Logan seemed swift, maybe even rash, but those who knew him understood. Carter Walton didn't move unless he was certain. And with Hope, he was certain. Certain enough to push for a wedding within weeks. Certain enough to present her with a contract. A transparency pact, as he called it. And certain enough to ask her to forget Liam Spencer once and for all. Hope agreed. Or at least, she thought she did. The engagement party shimmered with opulence, the Forrester estate lit like a fairy tale. It was everything Hope was supposed to want. Elegant guests toasted with champagne flutes. Ridge and Brooke shared approving glances. And the press buzzed around the high-profile match like bees on honey. Carter stood by Hope's side, his hand on the small of her back like a promise he meant to keep. Everything was going exactly as planned. Until it wasn't. It happened just as the cake was being rolled in. A screen set up to play a montage of Carter and Hope's sweetest moments together suddenly flickered. Then, silence. The music paused. The crowd hushed. And then, there it was. Grainy, but unmistakable. A rooftop. The golden hour. Hope's laugh. Quiet and real. Followed by Liam's voice. No matter what happens, you'll always be my home. Gasps rippled across the room. On screen, Hope leaned into Liam, her hand brushing his cheek. The clip ended before they kissed, but it didn't matter. The message was clear. This wasn't a forgotten memory. This was an ember, still burning. Carter's jaw tightened. Hope turned to him, frozen. She had no idea how that video made its way into the presentation. Neither did he. But the damage was done. The very next morning, Carter confronted her. Hope, I need to know where you stand. This can't happen again. He presented the transparency pact, formal now. Notarized. Cold as legal ink. You sign this and we move forward. 30 days. No contact, no messages, no emotional ties to Liam. Total severance. Hope hesitated. 30 days? It's not forever. It's a reset, he said. It's how we protect what we're building. What they were building. It sounded reasonable. It sounded safe. But inside, Hope couldn't ignore the question twisting in her gut. Was this really what she wanted? Or was she trying to want it hard enough? She signed. Day one was easy. The anger, the embarrassment from the party, pushed her forward. She kept herself busy, diving into Forrester Creations work, throwing herself into wedding planning, charity functions, and meetings. Liam texted once. She didn't respond. By day 7, she had started sleeping through the night again. She convinced herself that what she felt for Liam was nostalgia, not love. And Carter, he was steady, safe, present. But by day 12, the silence started to gnaw. Liam hadn't reached out again. And maybe that was for the best. But there were signs. Her heart skipping when she passed a photo of the two of them. That dream she had, the one where she and Liam were back at the cabin, laughing with Beth. She woke up in tears and told no one. Day 20, she broke. She drove to the Cliff House. She didn't knock. She didn't get out. She just sat in the car and stared at the front door until Steffi pulled up behind her and caught her in the act. What are you doing here? Steffi's voice was sharp, knowing. She didn't wait for an answer. You're about to marry Carter. Either you mean it, or you don't. Hope drove off without a word. Day 29 came fast. Too fast. The bridal suite was set. Her dress, an original by Zende, custom-tailored, untouched. The vows written. The guests confirmed. Carter, ever the professional, was already at the venue, checking final details, unaware that everything was about to explode. Liam showed up at the Logan estate just after dawn. Disheveled, sleepless, determined. I need to talk to Hope. Now. Brooke tried to block him. She's getting married today. I know. That's why I'm here. He didn't wait for permission. When Hope saw him, she didn't scream. Didn't cry. She just looked tired. You have 5 minutes, she said. Liam didn't waste a second. I found out why Grace was pushing Carter so hard to marry you. Why she kept steering you away from me. Hope narrowed her eyes. What does Grace have to do with this? Liam pulled out his phone. Emails. Memos. Confidential documents. She's been working on a merger between Forrester International and a private equity firm out of Dubai. The deal hinges on securing key leadership roles. And she's using your marriage to Carter as leverage. She wants Carter in position as legal chief and COO when the ink dries. You're the asset. A stabilizer. Hope stared at him, stunned. That's insane. It's not. Look. He handed her the screen. There it was. A strategy document with Grace's name. Timestamps. Projections. And a section titled Risk Factors. Unresolved romantic history between HL plus LS. Her initials. Liam's. Hope staggered back. She knew? She counted on you letting go of me to make this look clean. Carter's the pawn. You're the bait. Hope didn't speak. She just walked out of the room. She found Carter at the altar, finalizing details with the officiant. The guests hadn't arrived yet. We need to talk, she said. He saw her face and knew. I wanted this to work, she said. I tried. But you didn't trust me. Not really. You needed paperwork to feel secure. You needed silence to feel safe. That's not love, Carter. That's control. He swallowed hard. You still love him. I don't know what I feel. But I know what I don't. And I don't want this. Silence. Then Carter nodded. Once. Then don't do it. Hope left the chapel in her bridal robe, barefoot, hair undone. The guests never got an explanation. Brooke chased after her. So did Ridge. So did the press. But Hope didn't care. She found Liam waiting on the cliff where it all started. I didn't come to stop your wedding, he said. I came because you deserve to know the truth. Hope nodded. And now I do. She stood beside him, quiet. The ocean crashed below, the wind in her hair. For once, no cameras. No contracts. No expectations. Just choice. And for the first time in years, she made one. Not for legacy, not for loyalty, not for image. For herself. The end. Or maybe, the beginning. In the sprawling silence of the Spencer estate, where every hallway echoed with the weight of control, Luna found herself more trapped than ever. The cameras were relentless. The staff obedient to Bill's commands. And even her own instincts told her that escape was nearly impossible. But fate handed her a weapon one restless evening, when she slipped into Bill's study under the pretense of searching for a book and noticed a drawer left slightly ajar. Papers were scattered, old files piled in a stack as though someone had abandoned the task of cleaning. Luna crouched, her fingers trembling as she sifted through the documents, until a single folder caught her eye. William Spencer 3. She froze. Slowly, she pulled it free and read. It wasn't recent. The records dated back several years, long before Will's current diagnosis of late-stage liver cancer. The pages detailed his attempt to join a living donor liver program. A noble effort to help someone else. He had applied, undergone evaluations, but the conclusion was stark. Rejected due to abnormal liver enzyme levels. Not slightly abnormal, but enough to raise serious red flags. Enough that, had someone followed up properly, Will's condition might have been discovered much earlier. Long before it became terminal. Her heart pounded in her ears. This wasn't just negligence. This was history repeating itself, hidden and forgotten in a drawer. If Will's disease had been caught years ago, there might have been hope. There might have been treatment. But instead, someone had stamped a refusal, filed it away, and let him drift toward death. She confronted Bill the next morning. She burst into his office with the folder clutched in her hands, her eyes blazing. You knew. You had this all along. Will was rejected years ago, and no one followed up. His liver was failing then, not just now. Why didn't you push for answers? Bill didn't flinch. He didn't deny it, but neither did he confess. He simply stared at her, his jaw set like stone, before shaking his head slowly. It doesn't matter now. Luna's voice cracked. It matters to him. It matters to me. It matters to this family. You've kept everything buried because you wanted control. But it cost him time. Time he didn't have to lose. Bill stood, towering over her, and his tone was icy. Drop it, Luna. You think digging up old files will change anything? It won't. What Will needs now is stability. He needs you here, not chasing ghosts. But Luna couldn't. Not after what she had read. Not after seeing the truth in black and white. She realized then that Bill was never going to help her uncover the whole story. Not if it exposed his own choices. His own failures. Or worse, his allies. That night, under cover of darkness, she made her move. The mansion was built on secrets. And Bill's prized wine cellar held more than just bottles of vintage liquor. Luna had overheard a maid whisper about an old tunnel once used by the Spencer family during Prohibition. She waited until the guards changed shifts. Then crept down the stone stairs, clutching the folder to her chest. Dust clung to her hands as she pulled open the rusted iron gate at the far end of the cellar. Beyond it stretched a narrow passage, suffocatingly tight, but it was her only chance. She crawled, stumbled, forced her way forward until the tunnel opened behind a row of hedges on the far edge of the estate. Free. She didn't stop until she reached the rendezvous point. Remy was waiting in a beat-up sedan parked beneath a flickering streetlight. His eyes widened when he saw her, disheveled and clutching the file like a lifeline. She slid into the passenger seat, her breath ragged. You need to see this. They drove in silence until they reached his safe house. Only then did she lay out the folder across the table. Remy leaned in, scanning the documents with the trained eye of someone who knew exactly where to look. His brow furrowed deeper with every page. This rejection isn't standard, he muttered. The enzyme levels are high, yes, but the language here, not clinically significant, case closed. That's not protocol. Someone shut this down fast. Too fast, Luna's voice trembled. So he could have been diagnosed years ago. He could have had a chance. Remy tapped a name on the signature line. Dr. Alden Grayson. He signed off on this. Within hours, Remy had tracked him down. A retired physician, Grayson lived quietly in a coastal town, far removed from the chaos of Los Angeles. But when confronted, his mask cracked quickly under Remy's pointed questions and Luna's desperate pleas. I didn't want to, Grayson confessed, his voice heavy with regret. Will should have been flagged for further testing. I wrote the report honestly, but then a sponsor intervened. A high-level donor tied to the hospital board. They pressured me, told me to mark it insignificant, to shut the file. I was young, ambitious, afraid to lose my career. So I did as they asked. I regret it every day. Luna's hands tightened into fists. Who pressured you? Grayson hesitated, then whispered. A corporate backer tied to Spencer Publications. I never met him directly, but the orders came from someone with pull. Someone who wanted the case buried. The truth landed like a blade. Bill hadn't just been negligent. He had allies who deliberately suppressed Will's early warning signs, covering it up in exchange for influence, money, power. Will's life had been gambled away in a backroom deal. Remy leaned back, his eyes cold. We have enough for a case. With this testimony, with these files, we can drag Bill into court. We can expose what happened. But Luna wasn't satisfied with legal battles alone. She thought of Will lying in bed, writhing in pain, and knew time was slipping away too quickly. The lawsuit won't save him, she said. We need something more. We need a liver. Now. Remy nodded. There are black market registries, private donor lists, experimental cross-matching programs. It's dangerous, expensive, illegal, but if there's even a 1% chance, I'll find it. Luna placed her hand over the folder. Do it, whatever it takes. He doesn't have time for politics. He needs a miracle, and so the next week loomed large with dual battles. Luna and Remy prepared legal documents, assembling evidence that could rip apart the carefully constructed image Bill had built. Depositions were planned, witnesses identified, and strategies laid. At the same time, Remy began digging into shadow networks, reaching out to surgeons who operated off the grid, donor registries that functioned in secrecy, and genetic labs testing radical new compatibility protocols. Bill, sensing the walls closing in, found himself cornered. For the first time in years, his control was slipping. Luna wasn't just the frightened young woman he thought he could cage. She had become a force, armed with truth, evidence, and allies. And as Remy uncovered whispers of a rare match that could potentially save Will, Bill realized that the one thing he feared most was happening. His secrets were being pried open, his power tested, and his own son's survival slipping into the hands of those he had tried hardest to silence. The coming days promised confrontation, courtroom drama, and desperate medical gambles. Luna held the file tight, the proof of a betrayal that went back years. Will's life hung by a thread, and only the rarest chance, a hidden donor, an experimental transplant, could save him now. And as she stood at Remy's side, watching the storm build, Luna knew one thing with absolute certainty. Bill Spencer would be forced to show his cards. Whether he wanted to or not,